We're talking to Nadine Strossen, who's written a terrific book called Hate, Why We Should Resist It with Free Speech and Not Censorship. It's a very important topic to me, and it's part of a broader discussion that we're having about why we can't have civil discourse, why we can't communicate, why we can't solve problems. And obviously hate speech is at the end of the spectrum, but to me it's part of the whole question. So Nadine's going to talk to us about her book and give us some insight to this difficult problem. So Nadine, you've written this terrific book. Why'd you write the book?
I wrote the book because too many people today and actually throughout history have wanted to have government censor what they call hate speech. I'm putting it in air quotes because it's not a legal term of art, but people usually use the term to refer to speech that conveys hateful or discriminatory ideas on the basis of race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, and so forth. And as a civil libertarian who has always crusaded for full human rights for all people, no matter who they are, I absolutely disagree with the ideas conveyed by hate speech, but I know from experience that it does more harm than good to give government the power to decide that some ideas are so hateful or hated that they should be suppressed for that reason alone. When we look at other countries around the world that do have hate speech laws, when we look at the United States earlier in our history when the Supreme Court did allow government to suppress hate speech, predictably those laws are always used disproportionately to silence precisely the advocates of equality and equal justice and rights for all. By definition, they're in the minority. They are challenging the power elite who is enforcing these laws to silence their voices. Now, the only verb in the title of my book is resist, because I do believe it is really important for all of us who believe in human rights to resist the hateful message. But I urge people to do so through raising their own voices, to explain why the hateful ideas are wrong, to even dissuade hate mongers themselves, as has been done, from continuing to adhere to those ideas.
Now, you've made a career of these issues in a constitutional scholar, law professor, but you decided to write your book within the last 3 years, and I think it was what's happening on the college campuses that triggered this. So what were you seeing, and what is your message to the kids on college campuses?
Well, thank goodness to this current generation of college students who are unprecedentedly active on their campuses and beyond in support of universal human rights. You know, they're fighting against injustice in the criminal justice system. They're fighting against misogyny and sexual violence. They're fighting for LGBT rights. And they are the most active generation that we've seen since the 60s and 70s. That's wonderful. But we see too many of them supporting censorship of ideas they disagree with, apparently believing that that censorship is going to advance the social justice causes they're championing. And I want to persuade them, as I know is true, based on experience and based on both in the past and in other countries right now, that that censorship is actually going to do more harm than good to the causes of human rights and social justice that they hold so dear.
And then quickly, you talk about resistance, and in the book you talk about counter-speech. How do we use this counter-speech and resistance to get to the results you talked
We
about?
raise our own voices to denounce hateful ideas, to debate them, to explain why they are wrong, to inoculate against them through proactive education. We want to affirm the equal human rights and dignity of people who are disparaged by hate speech. And we also want to reach out in a compassionate way toward those who are engaging in hate mongering. Yes, to condemn their ideas, but not to reject them as human beings. And there are many encouraging instances of even leaders of hate groups having been weaned away from those ideas and now full-time advocates against hate. So speech is very, very powerful.
And your speech about speech is very powerful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, we've been talking to Nadine Strossen. She's written a book about hate speech. Take a look at the book, or get involved in this conversation about how to solve problems and how to use discourse to solve problems. I'm a firm believer that we've got to protect free speech in our country. There are some times when their limits are necessary, but for the most part, we've got to find ways to get past this conversation and solve problems. Thank you.